All right, so this is going to be the first video in a series that is going to be looking at the Polars library. So for those of you that maybe have not seen Polars, I'm going to just pull it up real quick. So the Polars library, so if you go to the site, they're billing this as data frames for the new era. So a lot of times when we're thinking of data analysis in Python, we immediately think of the Pandas library, which has been around, I believe, since 2008, quite a long history, and is pretty much, one of the, I think a very common entry point into the Python ecosystem for people that are, looking to build skills in data analytics, maybe data science. A lot of times their first interaction is through they look up, how to do a particular analytics style task using Python, and they're immediately confronted with Pandas code because that is our common interface of ingesting data into Python. Again, Pandas has been around since 2008. And as a result, I mean, Pandas was developed by Wes McKinney when he was a PhD student. And really the library was kind of born out of needs that he had at the time to kind of enable him to do the things that he was doing more efficiently. So, he started working on this library, and it eventually, it has gained a tremendous amount of popularity. Not only is the library just, extremely large, extremely powerful, but it is also used as a core dependency by many other libraries within the Python ecosystem. And as a result of that popularity, as we've seen advances in, maybe formats or infrastructure for working with data, Pandas has not been able to necessarily adapt and evolve as quickly because doing so would maybe hurt backwards compatibility. So there's a few, maybe, less than ideal implementations within the Pandas library that, of course, the author, has even openly acknowledged in blog posts that, would like to go back and fix. But again, it's too big, and there's too many people that depend on it. And instead of risking backwards compatibility, it kind of continues with some of those inefficiencies built in. And that's really where Polars comes onto the scene. So Polars is a relatively recent addition to the Python ecosystem. So I believe been in development for roughly around 3 years. And it is a data frame library, very, very similar to Polars or Pandas in the, types of analyses that it enables and the use cases. By kind of admission of the authors of Polars, they are not going to try to implement everything that Pandas does. So it's not going to be a one-to-one replacement for Pandas. But a lot of kind of the core things that we would turn to Pandas to do, we can do in Polars. And since it's very recent, the authors have been very transparent in that they are going to be very nimble in adapting changes, even at the expense of potential backwards compatibility. So it's been a very kind of fluid ecosystem, over these first 3 years of development. But a lot of significant benefits with respect to computational and memory efficiency that we can gain for it. And I have started or, wanted to do this video because recently, or this series of videos, because recently Polars has went to a 1.0 release. So previously they were on 0 versions, but they have released a major version 1 release. So this should be, relatively stable going forward. I do, expect that there will be, maybe some subtle changes, maybe even some in the future that do break some backwards compatibility. But we are at a stable release right now, so I figured this was a very good time to go through and look at this video or do this series of videos. So one thing to note throughout this playlist, I'm just going to show you, I'm going to be using an Anaconda environment. I'll call it my primary environment. And if I do a conda list in that environment, you will see that I am going to be using Polars 1.0.0. So I am going to be using that 1.0 release. And there's going to be a few points where I make comparisons to Pandas. So I'm going to be using Pandas 2.2.2. And kind of the things that I, aim to cover in this, playlist. I actually have a Pandas Basics playlist also on this YouTube channel. And I'm really going to kind of use it to kind of guide the topics that I'm going to cover. I'm going to try to make this as similar to that Pandas playlist as possible as far as the types of things that are covered. By no means is it going to be end-to-end extensive everything that Polars does, just like that Pandas playlist was not everything that Pandas does. But really what I want to do is, again, kind of give you a feel for the basics. And then with Polars, I am going to be writing some Pandas code as we go along, really to highlight the key differences in the two libraries in case you are, you've previously used Pandas and you're interested in moving to Polars. All right, so just note, I am using that 1.0 release. So if you're using Anaconda, you can create an environment, and I install pretty much everything from the Conda Forge repository. So you should be able to install Polars 1.0 or greater from Conda Forge. If you've already got an environment that has maybe Polars in it and you just want to see if you can update to that 1.0 release, you should be able to execute a Conda install C, or we should do Conda update, I should say, C Conda Forge Polars, and that will look and see if there is any updates available for your current Polars package available on Conda Forge. All right, another thing that I want to show is we're going to be using a couple of data sets to do these demonstrations. I'm going to use the same data sets that I used for Pandas. So where do we get those? So I went to Kaggle, and we're going to use two data sets. So the first, if you go to Kaggle and you search for store sales forecasting, all right, and then you filter on data sets. All right, so I'm seeing this first result here, store sales forecasting, and it says from data to dollars, unraveling store sales predictions. So if you click there, you'll see it's got a CSV file called stores sales forecasting.csv. So that's going to be the CSV file that we will need. So you, of course, you'd want to sign in, and then you can download, and I think it will bring that down as a zip archive, so you would have to uncompress that to get that CSV. The other data set that we are going to use, so again, just going out to Kaggle, and if you put in the search Netflix titles, again, filter to data sets. All right, and I'm actually going to be using, I believe it is this second example, so M. Rahul Vyas. So if you click that, there is going to be a Netflix titles.csv, and if you look at that kind of data, that brief kind of data summary that it gives you there, it has that show ID column, and that is going to be the one. So again, you'll need to sign in and download that. Again, it'll come back as a compressed archive, so you can just extract that and you'll have access to that CSV file. All right, so that's it for this video.